Yeah, okay, now it is good. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay, great. So let's get started on mastering risk management. So I have tried to make it as simple as possible with this presentation so that it's easy to connect. So let's get started with the next slide, which will be a quick introduction about myself. I'm running a company called OneDemi.com. The intent is to create an Uber, which connects the mentors all across the globe in the space of project management and the aspirants and the companies who are implementing projects so that we can achieve project success in those companies. We know that in industry there is 67% of projects which are failing every time, and the reasons are the skills. Skills is not about the credential. Many people have the credential, like I have a lot of credential, but that is of no use if we don't apply those credentials for practical applications. So that is missing in the industry, which is resulting in 67% of the projects failing. Now failing doesn't mean that projects don't go live. Projects go live, but after several months, like I had a customer, uh, who implemented, it's a shipbuilding manufacturing company in Middle East, and they implemented SAP project, and after 4 months, he calls up and says, $58 million invested, we are okay to get rid of it. Please recommend some other ERP or vendor who can help me implement this. So, look, it's not that the project was not celebrated, go live was not celebrated. It was a failure after implementation, after go live, after several months. That means we are not sustaining the benefits of whatever we are implementing in many places, whether it's construction projects or IT infrastructure, IT projects, or applications, or healthcare projects, or whatever projects we have this challenge. Because I have got an experience, exposure across different verticals, I can talk about it. So this is the mission and vision of One Demi, that it has to be Uber, a connecting dot between the mentors across the globe and the aspirants, project managers, and the companies who are implementing projects to make it successful for them. So let's move to the next slide. People can connect me on the LinkedIn. It's Dr. Azmat is the tag. You can use that. Strategies to deal with complexity. Let me take an example here. Okay, you can put it on the chat box. Which component of the aircraft makes it fly? You can just type in the chat box, what do you think? Which component of the aircraft makes it fly? Okay, what else? Akbar has mentioned. What else you think? Which component of the aircraft makes it fly? Okay, many people say wings, some people say engine, and some people say something else. But let me tell you, think about it. You need to have everything, every single component together, and not only every single component together. Let's say this is an aircraft which is designed specially. You need to have the pilot well trained to handle the new type of aircraft, and not only pilot, but also the ecosystem where this aircraft would fly, the place where it will land and take off. That's also extremely important, and that's called the systems thinking, the systems based approach. So when we have complex ecosystem or complex project in place, or a business where every business executes projects, otherwise the business will not exist, right? So when we have complex projects or product to be implemented, we decouple them. Decouple them. We break it down into manageable pieces, right? That's what we do. The work breakdown structure. If you think of large projects like neon projects and all, you need to break it down into smaller pieces. Only then you can manage. So decompose, divide, and make sure that you break the complexity into subsystems and then simulate them. Simulate it in smaller cycles in the sample, and that's what people do with agile, right? When agile is just a sample of your entire predictive, that's what we do in simulation. And then you look at alternatives, what works, what are the different scenarios in which this will operate. So every product and a project will go through the cycle of decoupling, simulation, diversity, that looking at alternative. And every leader or a business owner should look at alternative solutions always, and balance it, and make sure the iteration happens, the engagement happens, and the fail safe approach is there. That fail fast, fail different approach needs to be there in every business which every business, every project, every product. In fact, we do projects and products to grow the revenue or control the cost. That's all. There's no other reason, right? So let's move to the next slide. The whole idea is to help you understand the systems thinking before we go into the nitty-gritties of the risk management. Now, when we talk about risk management, it has to follow a structure. You can't master risk management until unless you plan for the risk management. You have the guidelines and frameworks on how to handle the risk. Next is to also start identifying the risks. You use your team, your stakeholders, your customers, your vendors, what not, to make sure that you identify the risks which are there, which are hampering your project or business or product, right? Perform the qualitative risk analysis, which is identify what is it, a very high, medium, low probability, or impact is very high, medium, low. So that is a qualitative risk analysis. And then we move into quantifying those risks. If you know if it's a very high probable, high impact, obviously that is my first consideration if I'm doing a mitigation, right? And then you give a scoring to each of those factors. If it's a very high, I'll give 90 out of 100. And if it is low, I'll give 0 to 10. The range would be defined. And then when I quantify it, I can even identify a magnitude score, the severity, right? I'll come to the severity when we go to the slide. Let's move to the next thing. Yeah, okay. Then you plan the risk responses. You know there is a risk. You have qualified the risk. You have quantified the risk. And now you have a risk response, which is, there are various risk responses, which I'm going to talk about. And risk response is not only for negative, it's also for positive risk. Look at Nokia, what mistake they did, what mistake they made. Like, they were very strong in the mobile market, but they didn't identify an opportunity, which is the smartphone ecosystem early. They didn't feel the pulse of the audience, that they were looking for interactive devices. And that's where they failed. They didn't identify this as an opportunity. And that was not the risk response which they. But Samsung, on the other hand, they were there in multiple other areas in the electronic goods. They invested in smartphone. That means they responded to that risk very well. So it's a business acumen of how to respond to the risk, and it comes top down. Let's move to the next one. We'll talk about the risk responses in the slide ahead. So implement those. Just planning is not enough. Implement and review how it's working. So implement the risk responses. Move to the next one, which is monitor the risk, right? This is a complete cycle of how it works in the fundamental aspect of risk management. That's actually the processes associated with the risk management. Let's move to the next slide. You'll get a little more deeper insight on what type of opportunities and threats will be there. Let's go to the next slide. We'll have to open the door for opportunities. And that's what every business owner, every project manager, every product manager, every product owner, every company CXO would look for. Now, in terms of opportunities, risk as an opportunity, what Mukesh Ambani does is he gets into different verticals and not just limit himself to same vertical which is there. In your case, probably you might be in any kind of a business. Let's say you're into consulting business, you're implementing SAP for that matter, and you think that you can also get into other areas outside your regular SAP pace. Maybe artificial intelligence is what you have not done before, but you want to take a chance and get into that area and serve your customers and exploit opportunities. Exploit is where you are going beyond your existing niche and try areas which are going to be handy for you to get into multiple verticals. That is the exploit. Exploit is really going completely reverse of avoiding. Some people avoid risk, right? Now, exploit is a complete opposite of avoid. You're trying multiple experiments. Samsung did that. That's the exploit response which they did when they got into the smartphone market early, right? Let's move to the next one. There is escalate. Escalate is something which you cannot handle yourself. Let's say this is more from the project management standpoint. If you cannot handle in your authority, probably you escalate to the senior management saying that, hey, look, there is an opportunity with this customer which I can't handle because there are limitations to my knowledge in that area, but let's go for it. So you are opening up opportunities for the organization. Now, there could also be ways in which you can handle this. Let's say you're a business owner and you have investors who are involved, and you think that something has come up in your customer base which you want to explore and you need investments, and that's where you escalate to your financial investors as well. So that could be one good area to look at. Let's move to the next one. Share. Now, some areas where we just think that we are not there, right? What we do is we transfer, or we'll say we don't want to do this. But look at opportunities of sharing, collaborating with other businesses. Let's say you are signing an MOU with a company and you want to share the risk and make sure that you get a good amount of pie where you will be positioned yourself as a partner in that area going forward as well. So sharing a risk is also a very nice way to respond to a positive risk. Okay, let's look at the next one. Enhance is you go deep into your area, deep into your vertical. Let's say you're doing certain things in your domain, let's say artificial intelligence or SAP or some area which you're working on. You want to get into more industry specific solutions and deep into that area and enhance yourself in that area. Let's say you're working for a client and you see there's an opportunity to enhance in the same vertical more. This is the response strategy which you implement. This is exactly opposite to mitigate. Mitigate is minimize, enhance is extend, right? Extend to what you're doing as such. You're enhancing an opportunity. Let's move to the next one. And this is more of accept. Accept is a reactive strategy. It's not a proactive strategy. You say, okay, fine, I'm already in this area. Let's say if I'm already in artificial intelligence, and if the market says there are so many projects coming up in artificial intelligence and AI, ML, and things like that. So I just react and say, yes, I'm fine. I'm already there in this space. So it's more of it's more of a reactive approach rather than, let's say, taking some action there. Okay, so accept is just a response strategy. Let's move to the next slide. This will be more on the negative. Negative is where most people focus on, so we should not miss out the threats, right? There are always strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And threats are the one you cannot ignore. Now, how do we deal with the threats? Let's start with the first one. Go for it. Yeah, avoid. Avoid is something which you should not do. It's just exactly opposite to exploit. So what we are trying to do, okay, when we say, you know what, you'll have to complete all this compliance in case of if you have to apply for this particular opportunity, and the compliance is quite rigid, so you just want to avoid and say, okay, let's not get into that. That's one strategy which I would say, don't take it up. Don't go for avoid just like that without doing a due diligence. And a classic example is during COVID, we were saying, let's not go out of our houses, avoid, right? Maybe you could have done mitigation by taking some protection and everything, but avoiding is not a great strategy as such. So let's move to the next one. So how do you deal with negative risks or threats? Transfer is what you do with insurances. Okay, you don't want to handle it, probably you want to just ask other company to handle it. That's why you transfer. Let's say you don't want to take up certain requirements and you think that someone else can handle it. You transfer it. You don't take share. It's opposite to share. Share is collaborate. Transfer is just throw it out, right? You handle it. You are completely transferring that risk. Let's move to the next one. Mitigate. Now, this is what we do to minimize the risk. And this is very, very important for everyone. Whatever role we are playing, whichever business it is, what project we are handling, what product we are covering, it doesn't matter. Mitigate is one important strategy which you should definitely do, because if you don't do this, what will happen? If you don't mitigate any risk, it will translate into issue. So that's why we need to mitigate negative threats. And this is the most common strategy for negative threats. We need to mitigate, right? So let's move to the next one in the interest of time. Okay, accept is live with that, like the reactive one. Okay, someone is on unmute. Please, guys, mute yourself. Let's move to the next one. Escalate. Again, something which you cannot handle, you think it's going to have an impact on your business. You want to escalate, go ahead and escalate to your partners, to your management, to the financial investors, or if you're into project management, of course, your management as such, right? So these are the strategies. Let's move to the next slide. So this is how you cover 5 different strategies for positive risk and 5 different strategies for negative risk response. Now we need to track the progress. So how do we track the progress? Let's move to the next slide. We need to track the progress, and this is one good template to use. You can use this template as it is, or you can even fine tune it. Okay, let me explain you this template. Let's say there is a risk description. There are supply chain issues for correct breaks or building code compliance. You can add into the risk list. Impact, you identify what is the impact of that risk, and also give impact scores and probability scores. Now, I said about high, low, medium, and all, right? That's qualitative. So first, before you get into numbers, right, give qualitative assessment for each of this. Is it a very high risk, or why very high impact, why very high probability? Then the risk score is should be high, right? So then you quantify, give very high or high as 5, and probability, if it is low probable, then 1. So you see what is the impact into probability score, which is your risk score. That is your severity. If your risk scores are high, let's say the 10, building code compliance, you cannot miss this, right? If pre-checks are failing and if building code compliance is not met, then you are in deep trouble. You can't even start the project, right? That is the whole thing. The project itself will not kickstart when you have this problem, right? So the trigger condition is also important. When do you take an action? You can create a response plan, like what is the response you want to have for each of these things, right? So you need to know when it will trigger, what is the response you will have. Like response, I gave you the strategies. For negative risk, there are 5 response strategies. Mitigate, you minimize that risk. Maybe you'll align with the authority to get this compliance checks done. You want to do a proactive check with the auditors. A lot of those things are the mitigation actions, so that you don't want that problem to escalate further, right? So you will also have owners assigned and the dates assigned and everything. So this is a sample tracker which everyone can use it in your own business and the projects and get started. And it's game changing. Let me tell you my success mantra, that what has helped me in most complex projects is I use SR model, stakeholder analysis at the beginning of the week and risk review at the end of the week. And this is what I keep following even today. When I'm running a business, also I look at the SR. When I am recommending to any CXO for their companies, I use SR approach for their board meetings and board decisions and things like that. That risk review is a very, very important thing for every business, every project, every product. So let's move to the next one. Next slide. Okay, now, yeah, on dot. Let's quickly go through. We need to definitely detect and resolve the problems. There are a lot of deep diving tools and strategies available. We need to. Let's move to the next one. Keep entering. Setting the priorities, which one based on the probability impact, you need to know which one you should focus on. Not go and deal with everything, right? You can't handle everything. You'll have to prioritize what you need to focus on. Let's move to the next one. And measuring the performance consistently. And the next one, tracking and managing the risk is what we did. And it's a quick summary of how you can get started with the risk management. And the secret is apply it and start using it. That's the only secret to make it successful. Thank you so